Okay, now we're going to take a look at how to multiply polynomials. And we may still come across some like terms, so just a reminder that to be like terms, it has to have the same variable and the same exponent. And it has to have both, not just one or the other. And then when we're combining like terms, when we're adding, subtracting like terms, the exponent does not change. Okay, and now when we're multiplying and dividing, the exponents do change. So in this lesson, we're going to focus on the multiplying. So when we are multiplying, to multiply with exponents, this is back from chapter 6, we add the exponents. And an example would be like when we had x to the second times x to the third, and that is x to the fifth. And the reasoning was because x to the second, that's x times x. Then we're multiplying, so drop the multiplying sign. X to the third is 3x is being multiplied. And how many do we have? Altogether, we have 5 x's, so x to the fifth. So we're kind of combining in this lesson the adding, subtracting with the multiplying from our last one. So find the product, that just means we're going to multiply. Coefficients, we're going to multiply like regular numbers. So 5 times 3 is 15, just like it always has been. It's the x's that are different. So x to the third times x to the second. X to the third times x to the second. We add those exponents, and that's x to the fifth. So then my full answer is 15x to the fifth. Number 2, again, the coefficients, we're going to multiply like normal. So negative 6 times 2 is negative 12. And then with the variables, we're going to add the exponent. So that's a to the fifth, and we're multiplying that by a to the first. So that is a to the sixth. So we get negative 12, a to the sixth. And then when we have problems like this, we're taking a monomial times a trinomial. We take that outside term, it's like distributive property. It is distributive property. So we're taking that 3x term and we then multiply it by each of the inside terms. So 3x times 2x squared. So 3 times 2 is 6. And then this is really x to the first. So 1 plus 2, that makes x to the third. Because again, we're adding those exponents. And then we're going to take 3x times x, which is really 1x to the first, if it helps to see the hidden ones there. So 3 times 1 is positive 3. X times x is x squared, or add those exponents. 1 and 1 is 2. And then 3x times, this is a negative 4. So 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. And we had the x in the beginning, but we don't have an x here, so then it's just going to stay x. There's nothing to multiply by, so it stays the same. Number 4, we have a monomial times a binomial. So I'm going to take that negative 2x squared, I'm going to multiply it by the negative 5x to the third. So I'll multiply my coefficients first. Negative 2 times negative 5 is 10. And then I'm going to multiply my variables, x to the second times x to the third. And that's, remember, add those exponents, so x to the fifth. Then I multiply the next terms. So negative 2x squared times 3x. Multiply those coefficients first. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. And then x to the second times x to the first. We're going to add those exponents, and that becomes x to the third. 2 plus 1 is 3. And so far, we haven't had any like terms. All the exponents have been different, so no like terms. Some of that's going to change when we get down here. So now we have a binomial times a binomial. It's going to be very similar to how we did numbers 3 and 4, how we took that outside number, we multiplied it, except we have two numbers. So in this first set of parentheses, the 3x and the negative 4, we're going to distribute each of those separately. So first we're going to distribute 3x. So 3x goes into the other parentheses. So 3x times negative 4x. Multiply those coefficients first. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. And then x times x is x to the second. And then just like before, it has to distribute into all those, so it goes over here also. 3x times 2. 3 times 2 is 6. And we had an x in the beginning, but no other x, so it just stays x, because there's nothing to multiply it by. But then, because we have this negative 4, we're going to multiply this negative 4 and distribute that into the other set of parentheses. So negative 4 times negative 4x. Well, negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. And then there's no x in the first one, but there is an x in the second one. So there's nothing to multiply the x by, so it stays x. And negative 4 times 2 are just constants. So negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. So we're taking each term individually from the first parentheses and distributing. So first we distribute the 3x into the second parentheses, and then we distribute the negative 4 into the second parentheses. When we do this, we end up with these like terms here. So then those like terms need to be combined. And remember, when we're adding and subtracting, which is what we're doing here in combining like terms, the exponent does not change. So I'm going to keep that negative 12x squared. I'm going to combine these like terms. So 6x plus 16x is 22x. And then I still have that minus 8. So I've just combined these like terms. And those are the only ones that are like terms because they're the only x to the first powers. So then that would be our final answer. I did my multiplying, combined any like terms. Number 6, again, I'm going to take each of these terms in the first parentheses and multiply into the second. So I'm going to take 4x times 8x. 4 times 8 is 32, and x times x is x to the second. Or we're going to add those exponents. 1 plus 1 is 2. And then 4x times negative 3. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. And then it has an x, but it's not multiplying anything, so it's going to stay x. And then we're going to distribute the other factor, or the other term. So negative 3 times 8 is negative 24x. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. And then I see some like terms here again, so those like terms have to get combined. So that's not going to change that 32x squared. But now I have negative 12x and negative 24x. And that's going to be negative 36x. And then I have a plus 9 that doesn't change either. If you're using a calculator, you're going to type in negative 12 minus 24. That's where the negative 36 comes from. Okay. Same thing here, except we're taking a binomial times a trinomial. So this 2n has to distribute all three terms. So 2n times 5n squared, that's going to be 10n to the third, because we had 1 plus 2 is 3. And then 2n times 3n, 2 times 3 is 6, and then n and n makes it n to the second. And then 2n times negative 2 is negative 4n. And then we're going to distribute the second term. So the 3 times everything. 3 times 5n squared is going to be 15n squared. And then 3 times 3n is 9n. And 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And I've got a couple different like terms here. So I'm going to start with just my biggest exponent is 10n to the third. And there's no other n to the third, so it's going to stay 10n to the third. So that term's done. I do have some n squared, so it's 6n squared and 15n squared. And that's going to make 21n squared, because remember, when we're adding and subtracting, we're not changing those exponents. So then those terms are gone. And then I have some more like terms. I've got a negative 4n, and I have a positive 9n. Negative 4n plus 9n is positive 5n. So those terms are gone. And the only thing I have left is that negative 6, so it's not going to change. So I should have all my terms combined, all my like terms combined, and it's in standard form. So biggest exponent down to no exponent. And then number 8, we have 3 terms in the first one. So I could distribute backwards because it's all the same, ends up being the same work. And I can start with a smaller binomial, but I'm just going to go ahead and start on the left. So I'm going to take 6x squared times negative x, and that's going to be negative 6x to the third. And that's because there's a hidden 1 here and here. So 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. X squared times x to the first is x to the third. And then 6x squared times 2 is going to be 12x squared. And then we're going to multiply the next term. Negative 4 times negative x is positive 4x to the second. We have negative times a negative is positive. And then negative 4x times 2 is negative 8x. And then we've got one more. I've got to multiply that 6. So the 6 times negative 1x is negative 6x. And the 6 times 2 is positive 12. And now I'm going to go through and do the same thing and combine any like terms. So I have the negative 6x to the third doesn't have a like term. I have 12x squared and 4x squared. And that's going to make positive 16x squared. Then I have a negative 8x and a negative 6x, and that makes negative 14x. Then all I have left is that positive 12. So again, in standard form and simplified. We're going to look at the geometry problems in the next video.